this is so interesting, hey? It was one of the things I found fascinating about talking with Dawkins. Dawkins knows that the scientific enterprise is in trouble. Like, he was hoping that if we switched to a kind of materialist atheism, that science would flourish. It's like, no, I think when you knock out the religious substrate, one of the first things that goes is science. It's fragile and unlikely to have a whole cadre of people who do nothing but pursue the truth and that they're protected. That was what tenure was for. That's very unlikely. What's the precondition for that? Belief in truth, belief that the truth will set you free.
Belief that you have to tell the truth. And I think
that's right, even when it's at the risk of your career.
Which is why science came out of religion.
Yeah, well,
it was their faith-based traditions, because they put something above each and every one of us, implored us to tell the truth because we weren't reporting to you. Because smart people are really good at lying to themselves.
Yes.
In fact, the smarter you are,
yes, definitely.
The more effective you can twist
That's why
the
the intellect is Lucifer. Absolutely.
And so that we see that playing its role. I mean, the learned people who destroyed Russia and Cambodia and China. I mean, these were just smart people.
Yeah, yeah. Pol Pot, he got his PhD at the Sorbonne.
Exactly.
And where he outlined his plan, much to the delight of the leftist postmodernists that taught him. And then he went back and killed, 6 million people?
At least. And the skulls piled up where, he didn't illustrate that part with his thesis, but, these are smart people who come up with these fantastical ideologies that are so destructive. But if the purpose of science is to find truth, someone has to hold you accountable. And we've all witnessed this, because you get into a debate and people will cherry pick the facts that they like, which is the opposite of telling the truth, because you're entitled to your own opinion. As Moynihan often said, but not to your own facts. And when we are dishonest, intellectually dishonest about the data, the facts that we're using, which is rampant now. We're seeing more and more. If you go back and just look at all the manuscripts that are published, when half of them are suspect. Not minority, when half of them are suspect, because people get rewarded not just monetarily, but with tenure, with pride and ego, and all those things now trump the truth. And we're left without a deeper belief that the truth matters. The whole system begins to implode, right? The gyre begins to spin faster and faster.
Yes, yes.
And as we crash land, the public is watching this and saying, I thought those guys knew what they were doing. And now I'm seeing them actually censor each other in a way that I wouldn't censor the guy who works at a local deli. I let that guy say his piece so I can say my piece. And these guys aren't doing the same thing. Again, Nobel laureates being censored because you don't like what they're saying reinforces a pathology that the public begins to appreciate. And I think that was directly correlate with what happened in this election. And that's why the Make America Healthy Again movement got traction, because some of the things that are being said, there is no way that you'd be able to accept this even 2, 3, 4 years ago. I know, because we were saying it. And I'll give you a story. This just happened to me. So the debates around vaccines have gotten a bit louder. And please do not start off everyone by saying, he's anti-vax, pro-vax. It's not about that. I had Bobby Kennedy on my show 10 years ago to talk about this issue. And I got, as usual, a ton of grief, but that was my job. I thought, to give people who deserve to have, a say, their minutes on network television. And the first, I asked, are you anti-vax? Because everyone's telling me you're anti-vax. What does that even mean? And I opened this book, and the first line of the book, the first line was, I'm not against vaccinations.
Right, right.
And then he said, if you're actually one of the few people who reads the whole book, go to the last line. I'm not against vaccinations. So I thought, my goodness, what I've been told about this guy might not be right. So then I started getting into it a bit more. And one of the issues is hepatitis B vaccine. Now, do you know much about the hepatitis B vaccine?
No.
All right, I love your psychological interpretation of what's going on here. So this is a vaccine that's effective reducing the incidence of a very bad illness called hepatitis B that destroys your liver, leads to liver cirrhosis and transplantation, kills you. You don't want to get it, and you can pass it to others. It's generally passed through sex, prostitutes, high-risk activities, and intravenous drug abuse. Those are the main ways that it gets passed. We mandate vaccination of every newborn as soon as they come out of their mother's womb. I mean, like that day. It's the first thing that happens. So doctors look at that and say, well, geez, I just described how you get hepatitis B. I mean, this child's not going to engage in either of those activities. It's true the mother might have hepatitis B, but you could test for that.
And that'd be a very tiny fraction of people.
Small, but it's there, and I understand that theory. But there's a lot of women who might say, well, test me. If I don't have hepatitis B and my child's not going to start taking drugs, maybe I don't want to inject them the first day of their life.
Right.
You can't ask that question. So this weekend, I'm at an event, and a woman who's I'm speaking, so I deliver a little bit of this message, and a woman comes up to me afterwards, and she says, "I'm a doctor, and I'm a little alarmed by what you said." And I said, "Well, what part bothered you?" And she said, "Well, I just had a baby, and I vaccinated the baby. So I think it's helpful for them to have the hepatitis B vaccine." So I said, I know you vaccinated the child, or you allowed the vaccination, but do you still think that it really was helpful to have it the first day of life? Could they've had it, when they were 10 or 12 or 15 or 18? Because I vaccinated my kids, but they were about to enter into college. Right, there was actually a possibility they might get exposed to it. And I saw the wheels turning and the panic in her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, "Well, at least it's safe," which is a unfortunate comment to make, because I'm not going to argue that it's safe or not safe. But if there's no value, then I don't want to even ask the second question.
Yeah.
She was going through something that I think many Americans are suffering from, because she realized that she didn't really understand this and had taken the advice of the experts. She couldn't acknowledge the expert advice might have been wrong.
Yeah, of course. There's also another psychological fact that you're running up against there, which is that we rapidly bring our beliefs in line with our actions. Like, people think you believe and then you act. It's like, well, some of the time, much of the time you act, you watch yourself act, you draw the conclusions about your belief that your actions indicate, and you bloody well stick to those beliefs. Well, why? Well, you've already committed yourselves to them behaviorally. So this physician that you're describing, she had a real conundrum at hand, because it wasn't a mere abstract issue for her. She'd already vaccinated her baby. So if she's wrong, then she did a bad thing.
To her own baby.
Yes, exactly. Right. On its first day. Right. Well, you could imagine the evidence would have to stack up pretty high before she's going to be willing to swallow that bitter pill.
That's why I think when it happens, it'll be a tsunami. Until
maybe
now,
it's already happened.
I think it's starting, which is why I believe it impacted the election so powerfully. And I know in Pennsylvania that it did. It made a very big difference, because we were actively involved there.
The Maha movement, per se.
That question.
Yeah.
It took a lot of people who started to feel the kind of anger that motivates you to vote when they began hearing these stories. Because you eventually, maybe that physician now, several days later, is having this epiphany. You at some point have to deal with the fact that you may have hurt your child.
Yeah.
And that makes you really unhappy. That violates the basic biology of mother.
Well, it's worse too, because you may have hurt your child, and you did it because you believed the experts. Right. So now there's lots of rats that crawl out of that nest, isn't there? It's like, well, why did I listen to them? And are they in fact experts? Right. And so we've certainly hit that period of questioning in our society in a very large way.
And when you